Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. I'm very happy to be hosting this amazing episode this week. Let me pull up our intro here so we can go ahead and get started. So, welcome to Portal Panel Podcast, a place where conscious gathering of free thinkers happen. In today's episode, we're diving deep into the art and practice of wild food foraging, an ancient skill that's finding new life in modern times, from nurturing greens and healing herbs to the bounty of forest and fields. Foraging invites us to see the landscape not just the scenery, but as a living pantry and teacher. Whether you're brand new to identifying edible plants or already have dirt under your fingernails, this conversation will offer insights, stories, and practical wisdom to help you harvest safely, respectfully, and sustainably. So without further ado, I want to welcome our first guest, Agnieszka Evenson, my good friend. And what's very special about Agnieszka, obviously, if you could introduce yourself, but in addition to introducing yourself, she's going to be coming at food foraging from a very different perspective because she's originally from Poland. So maybe she's going to talk to us about how it is in that part of the world. But without further ado, Agnieszka, welcome. And if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Agnieszka Evenson, and I am one of the organizers of the Portal Gathering Festival or conference that we're having in Tepoztlán in March 2026. So it's coming up in a few months. And I'm also one of the presenters that I'll be speaking about body language and face reading and things like that at the conference. But I am here today more in my role as an herbalist because I have been working with herbs and wild plants since I was a small child in Poland. And in Poland, it's a complete culture of foraging.
So in Poland, Agnieszka, was it like a common thing that people did foraging, or was it like a niche like it is?
No, it's very common. Even now, like I think it's becoming less and less common. But when I was a child in the 70s and 80s, my mom's work corporate environment would hire a bus twice a year so that the employees would have a chance to go and forage in the forest. And it depends on the time of year. We would be foraging for berries or for mushrooms or things like that. But there was like a definite thing, in addition to vacation or holidays or whatever, you would have a few weekends a year where the company would organize a bus, like a 50 people bus, to take people into the forests.
And you'll probably have to excuse my ignorance because I've not been to Poland, but um, being from Los Angeles, we don't really have the four seasons here. Is that how is Poland with the seasons and foraging?
Absolutely. In Poland, there are very, very clear seasons. So there's spring and summer and fall and winter. And so each season brings different adventures. And so actually it's funny because in the winter, there isn't much foraging, but the corporation would still organize a weekend trip to the forest. And what we would do in the winter, this is not related to foraging, but we would get into a sleigh followed by tiny little sleighs on a rope, and we would drive that sleigh as fast as we could all through the forest and then have a bonfire and eat sausage. And that was like a thing in the winter. But in the other seasons, there were different foraging events. Like in the spring, we might have berry picking, or maybe that was in June that it was the berry picking season where we would go for a weekend. And we definitely did a lot of mushroom trips, not just with the company, but like independently. We would take the bus because at the time my mom and I didn't have a car, so we would take the bus or we would go with friends to go into the forest and pick mushrooms and different things, leaves.
So I guess to kind of ground ourselves with a little definition of foraging, I kind of cheated a little bit and used Google here, but I just wanted to to ground us with a definition, so we're all on the same page here. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because this is Google. So foraging here is defined as the practice of searching for and harvesting wild foods, including plants, fruits, nuts, mushrooms, roots, and sometimes even shellfish or insects. That's kind of new to me. Um,
Yeah.
so it also includes insects and things like that?
I mean, mostly in Mexico, it's insects, but in Poland, definitely shellfish, because the sweetwater crabs is something that my grandfather would go. He would go sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning out in his secret spot, and he would have these buckets and he would put them in the water with bait. And I guess the sweetwater crabs would go into the bucket and then he would just lift the bucket out somehow. I don't know exactly how he did it. I was never invited along, but we would have a bucket of fresh crayfish, like when he came home, and grandma would make soup or whatever out of them.
Oh, delicious.
Yeah. And
So,
I mean, other than that, fishing, right? If you go into the ocean, it's fishing. But I think that if it's sweetwater crayfish, it's still called foraging.
right. And again, correct me if I'm wrong here. Maybe you can add to this. Uh, I did pull up a little bit for our discussion here, some of the foundations. And I just to kind of simplify things, I just kind of, as I read a little bit about this topic, I kind of came up with three pillars. I'll share them with you. Maybe you can add to them or discuss it in more in depth. So some of the foundations that I kind of came across in trying to learn a little bit about foraging was three foundational things, and I'm going to keep it very basic because I'm a beginner. So it's basically learn before you pick. So you gotta, I guess the number one key is to not misidentify plants because that can literally kill you, right? So
Sometimes.
that's one of the things that I kind of wrote down as the first pillar is you got to definitely learn what it is that you're picking. And then the second pillar that I wrote down was following the forager's code. So if you can, basically meaning that if you can't identify it, don't eat it. And part of that I found on there was people also believe in foraging sustainably. So a lot of people say that not to take more than 10 or 20% of the patch that you find there. Um, and obviously respecting private property and protected areas. And then the third pillar I wrote down was to start with the easy things, right? Like, so what would be the easy things? I wrote down like berries, nuts, greens, and mushrooms. And you mentioned mushrooms, but anyways, I wanted to kind of lead off with that and see if you can add to those three. So the three are basically learning before you pick. So identifying what it is you're picking. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you learned about foraging and identifying plants. The second one is follow the forager's code. And the third one, start with easy things to identify.
Okay, so when it comes to identification, right? Here's a plant. This is not an edible plant, but it's just a random plant. But in order to like identify it, you have to look at the leaf shape. But say you find the same plant, but the edges of the leaves have little teeth on them, that's a different plant. It's not the same plant, right? The other thing you look at is here, right at the base of this plant, there is like a little green thing in between the leaf and the thing. That's also a thing we look at, right? The little blossom that hasn't opened yet. There's like hair on it, right? So just notice, and then on the stem, if you look at it, oh, see there, you can see it. There's little
Yeah.
hair along the stem. So these hairs would be an indicator. So every one of these elements are an indicator of a specific species. So if you want to go out and pick a specific species, you will have to learn, like depending what you're picking, whether it's berries or whatever, say it's berries. Say it's berries that you want to pick. Which berries? Can you just eat all the berries that are out there? No.
No.
There are a lot of poisonous berries. Okay. There are a lot of poisonous berries. So berries are not safe. So then for a berry, say you want to eat a blueberry or a bilberry. The European blueberries that are smaller, they're called bilberries. So say you want to eat a bilberry, you would have to look at the leaf of the bilberry, like look it up and say, okay, I'm looking for a plant with these leaves and these fruit that look like this, that are this tall above the ground. Now you find a similar plant that's 3 times as tall, may not be the same plant. You have to be very careful, right? So, but it's not difficult because once you identify, like, have you ever eaten anything from the forest?
Actually, I have, and it was with a friend of mine, Jim Harden, who I was sharing some a campground with, and I didn't know this, but right in our campsite where we were staying, I was borrowing one of his tents. There was dandelions growing there, and we were I was in charge of. Well, I kind of put myself in charge of making breakfast, and so I used. Once he told me what they were, I threw them in my omelet. I made an omelet for both of us, and so that was like the first time I ever did wild foraging, I guess. And that
Nice.
was in New Hampshire, in the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
So did you like it?
It was delicious. Oh my goodness. Yes, I feel like when you are that close to the root of things, um the food that you eat, that you pick, has a different, it gives you like a vitality that's difficult to put into words, but for lack of better words, I guess it just feels, you just feel more alive, more vibrant, more vitality.
Yeah,
Um,
you know what? That's probably right. It probably does have more vital energy because that plant was just now living and breathing its free life, right? It wasn't in some kind of a box in a tiny little pot. It was drinking the water of the aquifer, you know, it was fully alive. With dandelions, actually, you do have to be a little bit careful because if you, not because you get poisoned, but because if you pick some leaves that are too old, it can have a little bitter effect. And then you might turn your omelet bitter. So you were lucky you got all the fresh, young, new leaves. But generally, with plants, when you're talking about increasing your own vitality, fresh, young, new leaves are better. For example, tea, if you're growing a tea plant, you don't grow the old big leaves. You don't use those for tea. You wait till the little thing comes up and then you rip that off and then there is a process to prepare it to make tea.
awesome. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. On that note, I've also read, please add to this if you can. I've also read like about the Vedic culture. It's just also ancient culture from, I'm not sure if it's like what we now call India. Maybe there's other regions of it, but in this Vedic culture, I also read that they believe in that kind of concept too of eating freshly picked food because it has that life force, I guess, for lack of better terms here, that we're kind of talking about. So this is an ancient belief. It's nothing new, right? And the other question I had for you was,
Hang on. You're going too fast. I have more things. So I wanted to ask you another question. I wanted to ask you if you ever had any fruit from foraging from the wild.
I'm thinking about it because I don't know if it's like technically wild. I've had fruit from people's trees that that are on their property, but I'm thinking about like in the wild, and
Mexico, you didn't
nothing
have
comes to mind.
mangoes like living on the
But
side of the road.
but yeah, I've done things like that. Like I just don't know if they were in someone's private property or not.
Well, but I think that, I mean, there's so many wild fruits in Mexico and they're no
Sure.
one's property and people just show up and pick them, right? But
But
you
yes, I guess to answer your question, I love to pick fruit off of trees. I can't say if they were like completely wild and no one owned them. I don't know that. I do live in Southern California. We don't have much free land anymore.
well, we can agree that, you know, if you forage, if you pick it off a tree, is foraging. Doesn't matter who it. Because, you know, in the philosophical thing of things, you know, land, can it really belong to anyone? Can you own earth? So, you know, the tree is a
Good
tree,
point.
the fruit is a fruit. The thing about the third rule of foraging, that not to take everything, not to kill the whole plant, that's very important. And it's not so much about taking 10%, but having the plant in your mind, like is this plant going to be fine? Some plants, yeah, you can cut it down to the root and it'll come right back up, no problem, right? And it's not going to kill or hurt. It's actually good for the plant because you might be taking off any fungus or whatever that leaves on the branches. But that's where your knowledge comes in, like how each plant wants to be treated. Because just like with humans, you know, I learned this long time ago, and this is the way I remember it. Not everybody likes the same amount of peas. If you're serving up dinner, some people might like a lot of peas and some people might not like as much peas. So in the same way, each plant has a different need, right? And sometimes it's totally fine. Like when you see a field of blueberries and it's like ad infinitum, you can just take as many blueberries as you want. That field's not going to be negatively affected by no matter how much you take, because it's a huge field. But if you see one little plant, don't take all of its leaves because it's going to die. Don't take all of its fruit. You know what I mean? Although knowing plants, they're pretty resilient. Even if you take all of their leaves, they're.
You know, that's another interesting point that you bring up. And check. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I frozen?
Yeah. You are frozen. Oh no. Our host is frozen. Or is it me?
So I'm just gonna turn off. I'm not sure what happened, the tech gremlins, but let me shut my camera off and come back on. Give me a second here.
Oh, good. Actually, I'm gonna be 2 seconds. I need to close the screen door. 1 second.
Okay, I'm back.
Hang
And we're
on.
back. Well, just to kind of fill in this time here, I came across this. I hate the fact that I can't give credit because I can't recall the name of the person I heard it from. But this individual uh, had learned how to utilize herbs and plants and make tinctures and oils and all these amazing things, like an apothecary type of a situation. And he mentioned something that you just reminded me of. And he mentioned something about when you're working with plants and things of that nature, that sometimes that it takes time. And the way he phrased it was very interesting, that it takes time for the plant to actually reveal itself to you. And so I found that as an interesting concept. Is there any thoughts that come to mind when I said that?
So yeah, so this is an interesting thing because some people are very much in tune with the plants and they are looking for the plant on a whole different level, an energetic level. They might find plants that are hard to find or high up in the mountains or deep in caves. I don't know if that's probably mushrooms, but you know what I mean? There are certain places that the lay person may not be able to go, or that you would need a lot of knowledge, and certain plants need to be harvested at a certain time and things like that. We're not talking about like the common berries or, you know, dinner mushrooms. We're talking about some more complex healing plants. But personally, because even though I grew up with foraging, I personally am not the top of the class when it comes to plant identification. I can identify certain plants for sure. I know exactly what they are. But when it becomes more complex, I sometimes have a hard time, you know, remembering all the details. And for that, I have to admit, I rely on the herbalists at the mercado or the farmer's market who know what they're doing. They go there at 5 o'clock in the morning, they collect the plants, they dry them, they process them, they do everything. And I can still get the benefit of the vitality of the plant, you know, as if it was coming from right away from the forest, but I don't have to go out there at 5 o'clock. So that's like a halfway measure. You know, and the thing, I have to tell you guys, this is not really about foraging, but I went to the chicken guy the other day and he was super upset about the chicken being a day old and he almost didn't want to sell it to me. So this man thought that the chicken that was butchered 24 hours ago was so old that it should not be sold to customers. Yet Walmart has chicken that's been there for I don't know how long. And
Long
so
time.
Yeah, so remembering that there are sources of food and sources of vitality that are so much closer that you don't have to, have a yard with chickens in it. You can still benefit from that kind of freshness by finding those people who have those resources for you.
Yeah, I thank you for that, because that was my next question to you was, so you mentioned the people who actually work selling these herbs, right? That's a great resource. What would you say are some other good beginner resources that if people want to learn more about this topic? Like where can they go? Is there a book, maybe a website?
I mean, that really depends on your location, right? This is partly why I'm not as comfortable foraging in Mexico as I am foraging in Poland, because in Poland I know exactly what to expect, what's there, what's not there. But in Mexico, I'm still learning, right? So that's why here I would go more to the person in the mercado who takes care of the identification for me. But in every country, there are certain easy things that you can forage. In every garden there are certain things that are healing plants. So just figure out, it's my connection, I hope this works. So just figure out what's the most common thing in your area, figure out what people pick in your area, at what time of the year that grows, and see if you can identify that one thing. And then you can get to deeper and deeper. And the other way to do it is to not killing the whole plant, but when you're out for a walk and you see a plant, this happened to me. This is a true story, so I'll tell you guys. So I went for a walk and I was actually looking for a flower to paint, because at my work, one of my jobs is to paint flowers and paint things. And so I was looking for something to paint and I saw this flower and it had all these different colors, like pink and orange and yellow, all in one flower. And the miniature flowers, each one of like bands of different colors. I thought it was super interesting. So I brought it home and I painted it. But then while I was painting it, before I put the video up on the website for students to learn how to paint, I was thinking I have to name this flower. I can't just tell them pretty flower I found in the woods. So I started looking it up, and it turns out that it's a flower that grows around here wild. It's a very healing plant. Tea made from that plant is really good for your heart. It has these unique flowers, and that's how you identify it. No other plant looks like it because of the flowers, the 3-color clusters. And so now I'm one herb richer that I can always it grows outside my house now, so I can easily pick it and make myself some tea.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned some really good information here, and I just want to make sure I regurgitate it because I think I understood that correctly. But all right, so because you answered some really good questions there. So if someone's what's the first step if someone's really curious about foraging? And you basically said learn one or two of local regional things
Huh.
that grow in your area. Boom. So that's number one. And then you also mentioned, answering the question that I asked, what's the easiest wild foods to identify for beginners? And you mentioned berries. So whether blackberries, raspberries, mulberries.
But you
And
have to make sure to identify them, because there are certain berries that are poisonous. Now, in Poland, the poisonous berries grow on bushes and the edible berries grow low down next to the ground. So that's one identifier that I used as a child. Maybe not always, but because then you go to step 2, see if the leaves are familiar. Are these the leaves that this plant is supposed to have? And if the leaves look different than you expect, and it's not the plant, step away. Don't touch, don't eat, especially with berries. So with berries, you have to be extra sure. But the berries that look like raspberries on the big bushes, like raspberries, blueberries, no, blackberries, those are, the whole plant is edible. And they don't have very many lookalikes, those particular berries. So you can always be safe. Well, there should be a lot of blackberries, I think, in your area too, no? Or is it too far south?
no, I believe there are because or some kind of berries because the reason I know this is because there's a lot of coyotes where I live, and when I go running, I see their feces, when they poop, and in their poop, I always see like seeds of berries or like things of that nature. So I know they're eating some kind of, I know they're foraging.
So that's another thing to think about, because even though coyotes are related to you because they're also mammals and they have a very similar digestive tract where it's like somewhat omnivore with maybe some carnivorous tendencies, they can eat berries that you cannot.
Mm.
So not all the berries a coyote can eat, a human can eat. There is overlap, but it's not a full overlap. So you still have to double check.
And lastly, just to kind of recap what you just said there, because I think that's also very important, is how to differentiate between a safe plant and a dangerous looking plant. And you mentioned cross-referencing it, so either pulling out your phone or a field guide, and then you mentioned talking to an expert that actually does that for a living is one thing that you said. So those are really good foraging 101 tips.
So
Um,
the other expert that was supposed to be here but had a problem and wasn't able to show up, she's actually in charge of these kind of eco tours where she takes people into the Rocky Mountains and she forages with them. So helps them identify the plants. And as a child, I went with an expert when I first started because those organized trips with the bus from my mom's work always had an expert with, and you could always ask them, hey, is this edible? Or maybe they were just like people who were experts around. I don't know, but there was always an expert you could ask. But the other thing is, if like when the foraging thing, don't pick it unless you're sure. That's only half true, right? Don't pick a lot of it unless you're sure. But you're welcome to pick one sample of it to bring home and analyze. Check your books, check your internet, check your phone, whatever, like you can bring a sample of whatever plant you want to learn and know about it. Does it have hairs on the stem? What does the leaf look like? Is it soft or is it scratchy? There are all these different ways of identifying the plant.
And with that said, I kind of do want to open it up to any questions that any of our guests might have. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can definitely type in the question in the chat, and I can read the question to Agnieszka. Oh, we already have a question from Ruth, who wants to see the picture you painted of the pretty flower.
I am getting it for Ruth. I saw that flash by, and I know where it is. I'm going to get it and I'm going to share it in the chat so you guys can see it. And the planted question was lantana,
Mm.
the plant that I met by looking at the pretty flowers. Everything is
Now,
labeled.
my other question, if that I kind of want to take this conversation into, we mentioned about fruits and flowers, but there's also herbs and all kinds of amazing medicinal things. Well, I'm sure all of these things are medicinal in a way, but there are specific herbs and things like that that people have been utilizing. And I just want to ask you about your experience in that area.
So just like the lantana that I just shared with you guys in the chat, so anybody can look at it. It is I shared the plant and the painting together. It's like the last picture. And so you can see how unique the flowers are. And so that is an herb and it has certain applications. And if you were to meet that herb in the wild, you could look up the applications and see if it resonates with you. The other thing is not every say you want to strengthen your heart, and there's like 1,572 plants that strengthen the heart. Not every one of those plants is going to feel good or resonate with you, right?
Right, right.
Like on the picture, I don't know if you can really see that it was pink, orange, and yellow, but yes, the yeah, it
Yeah,
had.
I wanted to share that so everyone can see it as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful painting, by the way.
Thank you. It's my job. But yeah. So I think that it's really important that to learn about these things and to learn about the herbs and even talk to the herbalist at the local market. They can help you and they can tell you what is available in your area.
So now that we're 30 minutes in, Agnieszka, I would like to take this kind of into a deeper conversation because I want to bring the topic of a physician who was Not only just any
Wait,
physician,
wait,
but
wait. Weren't you gonna ask questions from the audience? Did you even give them the chance to ask?
I did. Uh,
Oh, just in the chat. Oh, okay, I see.
or no, feel free to
I have a question.
fire away, JP.
Okay. It's a well-known theme in literature. I'm sure I've read a short story or something about it, about a young girl who is punished by her family because she was naughty. And the punishment was that she was not allowed to have a dinner of wild mushrooms that the father had harvested. And then it turned out that the mushrooms were poisonous and her entire family died, and she survived because she was a naughty girl. And she took that into heart and decided that the universe wanted her to be a naughty girl. So my question is about mushrooms and foraging for mushrooms, because this is a subject that I've been fascinated with. And how do you tell the magic mushrooms, and how do you tell the Amanita muscaria, which looks beautiful and is poisonous? And any other comments you'd like to say about identification of uh, of, uh, of mushrooms? Although I realize you're a forager and not necessarily a mycologist.
Well, I've studied some. So with mushrooms, the rule of thumb is to identify the mushroom that you want to pick. Like you want this mushroom or this mushroom or this mushroom, and then you only pick those three. And in reality, the mushroom that's really poisonous from your story, that's actually only one type of mushroom that can really kill you like that. Most mushrooms, like Amanita muscaria, it's not going to kill you. It's going to give you a stomach ache. It's going to make you feel ill. Might have some hallucinations or other things. Even normally, when Amanita muscaria is used for medicinal purposes, it has to be rested for a month after it's been harvested for some kind of a compound to disintegrate within it. But it again, the stories of mushrooms killing you have been greatly exaggerated. But at the same time, yes, there is that one mushroom, but just don't pick that one mushroom or anything that looks remotely close to it. Recognize the poisonous mushroom in your area. And if you're like, is that because mushrooms, they have the cap and then they have the skirt and then they have the leg, right? So and then they have the underside. So all four of the things need to be checked. So the cap, the top of the mushroom is one item. The underneath of the mushroom, is it like a sponge-like, or is it like little blades?
Gills.
Right? So what did you say?
Gills, I think.
Gills. Okay, yeah. I see, I did this all in Polish, so I'm not sure if the vocabulary. But so yeah, so the underneath the mushroom, then at the top of the stem, there is sometimes a skirt and sometimes isn't a skirt, and it's just like a little skirt. So you have to watch for the skirt. Sometimes the skirt falls off. You're not sure, was there a skirt or wasn't there a skirt? If you're not sure, don't touch it. And then the stem is like a different identification, the color of the stem. You can also scratch the stem and see if it changes color. You can cut a tiny bit off the edge of the mushroom and see if it changes color. So all those things are identifiers. But if there's like 1% of doubt, if it's the mushroom that you want, don't pick it. That's the rule.
Agnieszka, you also should have said about the spore colors, identifying the spore colors.
I understand. So that's like when you take the cap, the mushroom cap, and put it on something white, like a cloth or a paper towel, and it gives a certain imprint, right? But we didn't really do that in Poland.
Oh, okay.
It's
just one thing I learned, so thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, that's the thing, and people do use it for identification. When I went foraging for mushrooms in Poland, I was only allowed to pick 3 kinds. Once they were like, they kind of look like oyster mushrooms, but they were yellow and hard. They're called chickens in Polish. I don't know I don't remember the English name for them. The other one was like the king mushroom, whatever it's called. And the third one was his cousin. So those two are very, very easily identifiable. They're like the storybook mushrooms. They're brown on top, white on the bottom. They're very, very different and distinct. And then the third one is also very different and distinct. In those 3, you can never go wrong, because it doesn't look like any poisonous mushroom, even in the smallest bit. And there was another mushroom that was really slimy and had a sponge on the bottom that my mom liked, but I thought the sliminess turned me off. But yeah, those are the only 4 that I ever picked. So the dad in your story, JP, got greedy. Basically, he wanted more mushrooms and he forgot the rules. It's better to have 3 mushrooms and be sure what they are than have a basket full of mushrooms and be a little bit unsure. That's the rule. I don't know. I think it's a good rule.
What was the super poisonous one you said?
Let me double check the name in English because I don't remember. It's an amanita.
Yeah, that was the one that I'd mentioned, Amanita muscaria, with the sort of the white
But
polka
it's not
dots on a red
muscat.
cap.
It's an amanita, but it's a different amanita. It's white amanita or something.
Any other questions? Because I'm going to take this very, very deep, very quick.
Carlos, I have an unrelated question. I noticed that on my screen, you look as though you're bathed in blue light. Are you using a light filter with blue? And if so, for what medical purpose?
No, it's I am using a colored light, but it's not a Roscaline filter. It's just a colored light, and I just picked it because it looked better on camera, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it's just aesthetic.
I don't know what blue in the Roscaline system does, but it's very soothing color to look at.
Exactly.
I really like it.
I appreciate.
I've got a very red background, which doesn't. And
it's a very stimulating
Agnieszka
color.
Is sort of an illuminated gray.
I'm working on my light situation. Okay, it's gonna get fixed. So the mushroom that's the most deadly is called death cap in English. When I first typed it into the thing, it said that the technical name of it is Phallus fly agaric, but death cap is the common name that I've heard before.
Oh my God.
But I want to check the one that you cannot. It doesn't say.
How about psychoactive mushrooms? Little brown mushroom.
Vancouver thing. So psychoactive mushrooms, if you want psychoactive mushrooms and you live near Vancouver, you might want to go to a brand new neighborhood where they just laid down the grass after a rain and look for those skinny little mushrooms coming out of the grass. First, look at, it's called something cubanensis, like Cuba, like the country.
Yeah.
So that's the name.
Well, when you mentioned finding something in Vancouver, interestingly enough, I found a new mushroom store in Vancouver. So I went and checked them out.
You don't have to go to the
experience.
neighborhood and take it off the grass anymore. You can just go to the store and buy it. What kind of world are we living in? My first husband used to go to new neighborhoods and pick them off the lawn in the brand new grass because somehow the spores are always in new grass in Vancouver.
Well, if you buy them in Vancouver, this is what they look like.
Nice dosage guide and everything. See, guys, that's not what you're going to get when you're foraging for these. There is no dosage guide that comes with the foraging.
This is definitely post-foraging. They do the hard work. They do the heavy lifting for you.
Well, the one that you mentioned, JP, the red one with the white spots on it, that is a psychedelic mushroom.
Yes,
I don't know what the name of it is.
You got to be careful of the dosage of it.
It's not exactly Amanita muscaria. It's not exactly psychedelic. It's more like philosophical or something. I don't know. I've never used it, but I heard people talk about it quite a bit.
It's certainly something that you would get some intestinal discomfort by overdosing on it.
So the thing with the resting it for a month, that's supposed to alleviate that whole thing and eliminate it. So, but it doesn't protect you from propaganda. I know somebody who used to take it all the time and she still fell victim to propaganda. So unfortunately, does not protect you from programming only your own brain can protect you from programming.
Right. And well, I also heard that like your maintaining your health helps to guard against programming, right?
Yeah, going outside where you're not allowed to go.
Yeah, or just being healthy, just having your body healthy is in itself a guard against brainwashing, if you will.
You know, this is not exactly related to foraging, but when I first came to Canada when I was 16, I was quite shocked at the ingredient lists on products. Like as a child, it's been my hobby to read ingredient lists on things, and the Canadian ingredient list shocked me. Like, why does a jam need 16 ingredients and only 2 of them are fruit? Like, what's up with that? And why is there fruit in the jam that's not the jam? Like, there would be apple in like a berry jam or something. That really, like in Europe, and I don't know, I mean, they're much more picky about food in Europe than they are in North America, right? Like about cleanliness and stuff.
Well, I completely agree with you, Agnieszka. I mean, I think about that all the time because I feel like I'm so sensitive that when I put things that have a lot of chemicals on it, like I get a reaction. So I think about that all the time. Like I was recently just picking up things for my hair, and I had to make my own. So I bought like 100% like pure essential jojoba oil, and I bought rosemary oil, and I used a water distiller and made my own water and kind of made my own concoction and made my own spray because I'm just not happy with what I find in the stores. So I completely agree with you. But just to get back on the topic of foraging, I did come across an individual who, in addition to him being a physician and the philosopher, he was also an amazing forager. And JP, I'm gonna go ahead and mute you because I think your mic is live.
I was going to say about your hair that one of the ingredients that we always dump down the sink that's really, really good for the hair is rice wash water. So when you're washing your rice to cook the rice, that white water, that's really good for your hair.
I was going to say, or when you do horchata.
No, well, maybe,
no,
yeah,
not that.
You don't need all that gritty stuff, right? You just need the actual water with a little bit of the starch in it.
Oh, so going back to what I was saying is he was an amazing physician, but in addition to that, he was also a philosopher and a forager, and his work actually had a huge impact specifically on like the Western world. And he was the physician for Marcus Aurelius. His name was Galen, and he wrote a book specific called The Antidote. And in this book, it specifically deals with things he was foraging, and he was making these amazing antidotes, but that are kind of mind blowing because the way I understood the explanation of this was he kind of went about it like looking up like as a technology almost, and I say that because his work was a medical authority for over 1,000 years after he was gone. So he was a very impactful person in like the scientific method and things of that nature. But I wanted to bring this to this conversation because he was an amazing forager and he looked at foraging almost like a technology. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on have you ever heard of him, or like what do you think about that?
I haven't studied him, no, but I think that it's really important. Sorry, I had something and I had something in my head that just escaped me. I think it's really important to analyze the old recipes. That's what it was. Analyze the old recipes and what people used 1,000 years ago, because I just read an article very recently about a remedy, like a plague remedy that they used in Europe during the Black Plague. And when we first bought into the allopathic medicine in the early 19th century or early 20th century, or towards the end of the 19th century. When we first jumped onto the allopathic medicine train, we have given up a lot of the herbalist, the traditions and stuff So now it's 2025, and they made this remedy from the Black Plague days, and they treated some viruses, and it was able to kill some pathogens that even modern medicine has a hard time killing. So it's not all weak. It's not all. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to herbal medicine than we were told, because allopathic medicine had ruled the world since we were born.
And Agnieszka, or I'm gonna just pose this question if people want to unmute themselves and talk about it. Has anyone ever used like foraging, maybe for health reasons, like to help your body detox, or just to forage for health reasons? And if so, like how was that outcome?
I think Svetlana has told me a story before where she got some guy, more probably from like an herbalist from the Mercado, to go and forage this żywica, this sap, tree sap, right, Svetlana?
No, actually, he just gave me some like radio. I'm very new to foraging, but it's very fascinating to me.
But the guy who picked up the tree sap from the forest in Russia, he was a forager, right?
I'm not sure how he got this. I just like the substance, żywica.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very grateful to him, but I'm not sure where he got it.
Do you, in Russia, do you do any other type of foraging other than what I've mentioned?
Well, I know people pick herbs for like in the summer and then dry them out and make tea all winter, and it's delicious, but I never did it myself. I want to learn.
Yeah, I've picked some tea and made it. Actually, you know what's good tea? If you take the strawberry ends, the tails of strawberries, and then mix them with a little bit of mint, that's a really nice tea. Like when you're eating the strawberries and the garbage that you'd normally throw in the garbage, that bit. You can also put it with pineapple skins. That's also really nice tea.
Wow, nice. I'll try.
And you just kind of made me think about like how foraging is actually accessible to anyone. Like I live in Los Angeles, and before I kind of before I didn't know about foraging. Like it was not like I would never looked at things that way. But
Mhm.
now that this topic, I'm learning about it, like I can go outside and I can see things like, oh, this is rosemary, or simple things. Obviously, I'm just learning, but like I get to see things that are like edible. Like, so it's like you're, what's the word? Like when you know about it, it like when you become aware of all these things that have always been there, even though you might live in an urban concrete jungle, right? Like there's still foraging that can take place.
People often use decorative cabbages for their lawn. And I've seen also onions being used for like decorative pieces on the lawn because they have those purple flowers. Those they look like spheres. Onion, green onion.
Yeah, I don't know why we have uh grass lawns everywhere, because they consume so much water.
And what?
And yeah, like I unfortunately um have some grass up front, not because I want to, because it's not my property, but it consumes a great deal of water, and it barely stays green at all, and it doesn't produce anything. So
You guys have grass in the desert. Does that even make sense to put grass in the desert?
where
Like
did that come from?
you know, like you should have some cactuses and maybe some like, some desert plants in your yards, not like with maybe some nice rock formations. That would look really good. I've seen those in Arizona. Those are cool. But like, why would anybody try to sustain grass in the desert?
Yeah, I have no idea. And one thing I do is like a tree does amazing things. Like a tree provides shade, right? And then you can put you could grow all kinds of stuff like around the tree, and that way it requires less water. Like, it's possible. It's definitely possible. But again, I guess that comes with a little bit of awareness. Once you start becoming aware of like how good these things are for you and how good these things are for like society and nature, then that's when you can go ahead and take that first step into actually
It's
changing.
5 minutes to the hour. I'm afraid I have to leave. Thank you very much for an interesting conversation. I've got to be at a show in 5 minutes. See you later. Bye
Thanks
all.
for
Bye,
joining, JP.
JP.
Bye.
Ruth, did you unmute because you wanted to say something?
Well, the question that Carlos asked was, I ever made anything herbally? I did make some calendula oil for my daughter's eczema. I don't know what the outcome was because she was suffering from a lot of inner um, whatever was going on inside of her that she had to go to a doctor for. So I don't know if it might have helped had she not had the other issues going on, but that's the only thing I've done so far. Actually, I've done some goldenrod too, but I haven't used it at all. So
What about using chamomile?
yeah, and I had so much of that growing this spring, I never even picked any of it. Duh.
That's my favorite tea, chamomile. Oh my God. It's like so good for the digestive system.
That's my problem. I do not know when to harvest things, and that's my downfall.
You would harvest things with your chamomile, if you want to learn about harvesting chamomile, what I would be doing is I would be harvesting that chamomile as soon as it went to flowers, and just like the top part of the plant, and let it go to flower again. And every time it goes to flower, pick like the tips like they do with tea, and that way you could have 2 or 3 or 4 during the season, and you could have, and then with so there's 2 ways of drying herbs or using herbs, like not necessarily drying, but like I either dry herbs on like a flat basket and allow them to get completely crispy, and then put them in a jar when they're so dry that like they snap. That's when you put them in a jar. Never, ever, ever, ever put any dried herbs in a jar unless you're 1,000% sure that they're completely dry. Because if there's any moisture hidden within, it'll mold, and you'll have a nice jar of mold.
Yay.
But the other way to do it is what I'm going to do today. I bought some herbs at the market that are in season right now, and one bunch we're going to eat, but the second bunch I'm going to cut up really fine, and I'm going to put it on a cookie sheet in the freezer and let it freeze that way, like flat. And then once it's completely frozen, I'll put it in a bag, and I'll have like an herb that I can sprinkle on top of things. And as soon as it touches food, it'll defrost and it'll be like a fresh herb.
That's a great idea. I never thought of that.
You
And I
just
never
have to-
thought of the strawberries either. That's a great idea. Thank you.
you know what? So much garbage that we have as garbage in the kitchen is not really garbage. Like if you think about it, tepache, right? That's the Mexican drink. It's made out of pineapple skin, sugar, and cinnamon. And sometimes people put like a splash of alcohol in it to get the fermentation started. That's it. And then you leave it for a couple days and you have a drink. You know what I mean? The same recipe, but if you boil it, it becomes like a pineapple cinnamon tea. You can put apple peels, you can put strawberry ends, you can put pineapple peels, you can put that all in a pot, cook it, and then you have a drink. You can serve it cold or hot. Throw some cinnamon and some good healthy sugar, like, piloncillo or whatever. There's good sugars, and you have a nice drink. Honey.
So in preparation for this episode, I did some foraging of myself, and I got some help. So I got some rosemary from my mother's garden when I went there last week, and I also had my girlfriend's mother also has some herbs at her place, and I was telling her about these things, and she brought over some stuff. So did some foraging for this episode, and I
Show
also
us the herbs. Show us.
this is just one. I have more, but I don't want to bring
You at
everything.
least show us one, like examples, not just
Well,
the
this
other.
is a rosemary.
Look at that. That's a beautiful rosemary. Looks
Yeah,
very.
rosemary. And so what I did, I took it the next step, and I actually made something, because you could use it. These herbs you could edit. You can eat them, So I use that for my steak as well. I dry it out and I put it on my steak with some salt and pepper. Also use some thyme, and then I created my own leave-in moisturizer for my scalp and hair because I had been noticing some dandruff. And like Agnieszka mentioned, I was at the store and I was like, why are there so many ingredients here that I don't even know what they're about? I just want something natural. So I went ahead and I took some of that rosemary and I put some I got some distilled water and what else did I put in here? Rosemary and jojoba oil, and created my own
Next
little.
time, put that ice water in there too.
Yeah, I'll have to try that. But in any event, I guess what I wanted to share, it's how easy it is to forage, and you can just ask people, right? That I'm sure people know someone that they already have a little garden where they're growing stuff, and you can make amazing things. And this saved me so much money because a lot of the hair product stuff is way more expensive, So in any event, there's some financial incentives for foraging as well.
So this is Mexican, like it's like homemade, but I bought it in a store. This is a mosquito repellent, and it has 5 ingredients. One of them is water, coffee, citronella, cloves, and that's it.
Yeah, those are the good ones. Just keep it simple.
This one, my dogs don't even mind.
Yeah. I love that. If I could find something like that, especially for mosquitoes, because they absolutely eat me up. Um, Finding something natural like calendula, right? Calendula, you mentioned calendula?
No,
I hear.
citronella. So for like
citronella, yeah.
So for like a simple mosquito repellent, I would put some citronella oil. Like say you can put alcohol, like rubbing alcohol in a jar, and then well, mostly I make it with essential oils. I was just in Tepoztlán and I didn't have anything with me. That's why I bought this. But most of the time I put it at rubbing alcohol and a few drops of citronella, a few drops of rosemary, whatever else they don't like, thyme, like different things. Just be careful, don't make it too strong because it can be like burny for your skin. But if you do, just add more alcohol and it's fine. You know what I mean? There are certain essential oils that they really don't like. So find what you have that mosquitoes don't like. But citronella is a key ingredient that keeps them away. And I don't know why these people put coffee. I've never heard of coffee being a ingredient for mosquito spray, but yeah, the second ingredient is coffee.
Interesting. Maybe in Mexico they just don't like that. The mosquitoes down there, they don't like coffee.
Maybe in Mexico they put coffee in everything because they got so much of it. Grows everywhere.
The one oil I put in for mosquito repellent is oregano. It's got not by itself because it's very burning, but just a couple drops in something else, it always keeps them away.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did. I was doing some experiments with the mosquito spray, but some of like I put cumin and I put caraway in there, and that kind of burnt my skin. So I decided not to go with those two in the future. But
that's one thing I learned in making my little concoction here is how little of the essential oils you actually need to make a batch. And I'm like, man, they're making a killing. Yeah.
I've had the collection of essential oils for years, and I know some of them are old, but then when they get old, I just use them for like washing the floor or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I've had this oil for 15 years, but if you put it in a bucket of water with a little soap, it still makes the whole house beautifully, and you don't use them up. I don't use them up. I end up, like.
So we are an hour in. I want to open it up again to any questions that our guests might have, or Agnieszka, if you want to discuss something.
I want to know what the ladies want to know.
I want to know how to get as smart as you as far as all the herbs are concerned. I know you started young.
Yeah, and it's like a mind-opening thing. Like I remember when, because my father's a doctor, and his opinion was that herbs will never, like, sure, herbs work, but they will never work as well as medicine. And And I had to unlearn that. Like, even though as a child I used herbs, I still believed that it was like a dichotomy in my brain. So I had to figure out a way out of that thinking. That's programming. And in North America, because of World War II and the canned goods being so popular and the government putting a lot of money into popularizing canned goods in the 60s, the whole growing your own food was very much discouraged. Did you guys know that in Bermuda, people believe that growing your own food means you're a slave, so they refuse to, and they go to the store to buy things?
That's
I asked a few
fascinating.
people about it, and I was just like, why? Mostly Black people in Bermuda, and like, they don't want to be like slaves, but yet they're slaves because they pay these premium prices for these American goods that are in the grocery store that are not the best, but they have such great climate to grow in their own yard.
You know, I heard, you know what? My uncle, rest in peace, he's no longer with us, but when I was younger, I went to Mexico and I noticed that he wouldn't drink water. So after a few, I was staying with him in his house, and after a few days, I had to ask him about it. I'm like, "Hey, I never see you drink water," and he mentioned to me, "Oh, it's for water's for poor people," and I just thought that was the weirdest answer in the world. I was like, how do you get to that point? But anyways, yeah, anyways, you reminded me of that outrageous answer that I heard when I was like 14
Yeah,
years
but
old.
these are the things that people are programmed with. It's not his fault. Somebody told him that. He was trained that way, right?
Yeah, fascinating. Is it, the only thing I can think of was maybe back in those days people would get sick if they didn't understand the boiling of the water and then they would I don't know. That's the only thing that makes any
Well,
sense
even
to
the
me.
boiling of the water in Mexico, you have to boil the water for 8 minutes before it's completely safe to drink, because there are some pathogens that can survive the initial boiling. So it has to be like clock in hand, 8 minutes, but at eight
Mm,
minutes, all of the pathogens die. So,
interesting, yeah. So,
but I don't know, because I'm really into water these days, and in this house we have captation capture
oh,
system where we
yeah,
capture rainwater. So we wash dishes in rainwater, we wash ourselves in rainwater, and it's super fresh. I don't know how to explain it. It's not the
yeah,
same
no.
like the shit that comes in the pipes in the city.
Yeah, does your skin feel softer? Like you don't even need lotion almost?
No, I don't need lotion, but it could be the climate too. And I
Because
mean, I put face cream on every couple of days, if I remember.
I have gone to like natural springs of water, and there's this place in California called Benton Hot Springs. If anyone's in the area, it's like the best place. You guys got to go there. Um, and when I take a shower there, man, it just feels like like it feels like you still have soap on you even when you rinse. Like the water feels so smooth on you.
That's alkaline water. So that's a sign that the water has like a lot of alkaline compounds in it.
Ah, okay.
So,
Yeah, so I that's the only place. Other than that, I use the city water, and that's not very good.
and I haven't really thought about the lotion thing, but I used to use a lot of lotion in Canada, and I don't really in Michoacan I did a little bit because it was super cold and dry, but no. But like, so at the beginning, when I first started my journey for the herbal things, I used to make things like what you do, like, mix my own things. But like, I don't know if I've gotten lazy, but now I just mainly use one ingredient things. Like for my face, I use this oil that actually an atomizer sold me from,
Ah, aguaje oil.
and it's from South America, and it's super orange, and that's what I do when I remember that I have a face. But and for my hair, actually I use a European shampoo that I was familiar with in Europe because it's more gentle than the stuff they have in Mexico. And then like maybe some coconut oil in my hands or something. Like, not very much. I don't use very much stuff anymore. Maybe that's why I look so young, because I don't use
Probably.
or anything. Yeah, I never really was super into, like, yeah, lotions maybe when I was younger. But in Calgary, you need lotion, but super dry.
So I'm very interested in this foraging topic, but in the past, I can't say that I really took a deep dive into the topic. And I want to say it's because of the convenience factor. I think that it's convenient because I've done like detoxes, right? Like I've done like 6-week detoxes of eating really healthy, but I don't know if I would call that foraging because it's basically me finding ingredients like at stores, or if I can't find them at the stores, then I order them. So I feel like I'm kind of cheating, but like I guess my question is it am I just making an excuse? Because it seems like foraging is not that difficult. Maybe I just need to
I
learn
think
my
that it's
surroundings.
like take it one step at a time. Maybe it's super overwhelming to switch from all the whatever store brands to whatever, but like take it one item at a time. Okay, your
Yeah.
mosquito. Okay, let's look at the mosquito. That's super easy to make at home. Let's just make that, right? Shampoo for me, super difficult to make at home. I've tried 1,000 recipes. My hair is too fine, and none of the recipes. Your hair would probably work great with homemade shampoo because you have harder, coarser hair. But mine is like, like a little kid's hair, super thin. And then any kind of oil, like if I had something with jojoba oil, my hair would just be like greasy looking. So I gave up on the shampoo. I took 10 years learning, but there are certain items that you can easily make yourself just to minimize that chemical footprint in your life. So it just doesn't matter if you don't have to jump into the forest and do everything from the forest tomorrow. You can take those halfway measures, go to the market and talk to the herbalist there, ask them about herbs, ask them to take you for a trip. So like they can take you along with them. Like say they go to forage at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, make an appointment with them, go with them and check what they do, see what they do. They'll tell you a lot of stories. You can even pay them for the experience, that's not a bad thing. But you can learn step by step and change things. Same with your kitchen. There's things, check your ingredients. If something has 17 ingredients, see if you can do, like with jam, jam is super easy. If you have some fruit that's going bad, just cook it for a while.
Yeah.
It becomes jam. And then add some whatever sweetener like honey or whatever you like to it a little bit until it's sweet enough for you. And that you have jam. You have a little jar of jam. Even like a basket of berries you forgot at the back of the fridge can become a little jar of jam.
And that's the beautiful thing about foraging, is that it also leads to all these other skills like canning and baking, right? And like using all your ingredients. Yeah, that's the way to live, man.
My dogs are going crazy barking.
No
I hope
worries. So
here.
is there any other, this was a great I love the way you kind of brought all that together right just now. Is there any other thoughts, comments, questions before we close it out?
Well, I did put this in the chat, but for anybody starting out, like the way I started out, was with flowers. Find out what edible flowers are and then start identifying them. Then you move on to other things because and once you get used to those, you know how to start identifying other things. So that's my suggestion.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much, Ruth. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. I think we had a couple of events we were going against today, but can't be helped.
All right. So with that said, that brings this episode to a close for today's portal gathering on wild food foraging. We've explored how this ancient practice can nourish not only our bodies, but deepen our connection with the land and remind us that nature has always been our first teacher. As you step outside, remember that foraging isn't about taking as much as you can. It's about slowing down, observing closely, and harvesting with gratitude and respect. So if this conversation inspired you, start small, just like Ruth said. Learn one plant, one season, one practice at a time, and most importantly, let curiosity and care guide you. So thank you again for joining us here at Portal Panel Podcast, a place where free thinkers come together in conscious gathering. I do want to remind everyone about our website, www.portalgatherings.com. We have tickets available right now. You could get them cheaper. The longer you wait, the more they're going to be. But they are for our in real life meetup taking place late February, early March, where all the speakers that are speaking here at Portal Panel will be there in real life. So you guys can get to meet them here and then meet them in real life, where we're going to have a lot of fun. So yeah, and in addition to ticket sales, we also have a blog there that's amazing. It's anywhere from 2 to 5 minute short reads about about the topics that we talk about here, for example, and much more. So yeah, check us out, and thank you for joining us today.
Step through the portal.